And we are live with today's pre-show of our 220-1201 Core 1 study group. Hello, everyone. Welcome aboard. We are just getting the last few things done here. I'm checking cameras. Recordings are going. Things seem to be working. Yep, we got graphics are working. Lower thirds work. Look, all the buttons are doing what the buttons are supposed to be doing. So that's what you're looking for. If I had to take the entire IT career and bring it down into one single thought, the buttons need to do what the buttons are supposed to be doing. Once we do all of that, it seems pretty simple, right? That's the plan. Hello, chat room. Hope everybody's doing well. We've got a lot to go through today. I've got all new questions. I wrote these questions probably over a week ago, so I don't remember them. I'm sure they're great. I'm sure they're fine, but we're checking things now. This obviously is not the actual study group. I mean, it's the beginning of the study group. This is the pre-show where I make sure all of this is working first. I get a chance to talk to you guys and say hello. Hello, chat room. I get to make sure that all of the things that I've set up here are working the way they should be. And indeed, they currently do appear to be working that way. We had a number of internet outages yesterday. We had 3, like one right after another. And I was never able to get any information on why my internet links dropped out. But so far today, they've been very good. So maybe they worked out all of the problems yesterday. Maybe that's what happened. Let's bring up the chat into live chat. There we go. So much better. Now we can see everybody. Hello, everyone. Instead of the top chat, that's no good. I wish there was a way to change the defaults on that one, but we'll figure out the details. Thanks everyone for being here. Make yourself comfortable. We'll be getting started at the top of the hour, so we have about 7.5 minutes to go before things really get rolling here. It has been a busy week already here. There's so much more that we get to do this week. You'll see with the schedule for this month and next month, it is varied and scattered, because there's so many different things going on, which I guess is good, right? You don't want to be boring. You don't want to have nothing going on. You want something to be going on. So something is going on. Those things many of those things are work related. Some of those things are not work related. So always have a balance, right? That's what we're working on. So we will get started with our Core 1A Plus study group in just about 6.5 minutes or so. And we will get things going. It's been a super great month so far. We've kicked off March. March, how does that work that we are in March? I don't understand. That's how I know I've been super busy. I can't keep up with the changes. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what month it is. It's all a blur at this point. But there's a lot going on. We got a lot to do, and I'm going to make sure we get it done. We got plenty of time. We have scheduled everything the way I would hope it would need to be scheduled. We're going to find out, right? 6 minutes to go. 6 minutes, and we'll get things started. If you would like to join us, we do have our digital pin cushion here of things that are going on in the world. There it is. There's our cushion. I feel like my camera, it's a little low. I feel like I'm a little low in the frame. I might adjust something because, if you want to adjust something prior to a live stream is a perfect time to adjust something. So I'm going to try it anyway. We're going to see how it goes. What can happen? What's the worst that can happen? He says as everything goes dark. That's a little nicer. That is somewhat better. There we go. I really just need you here to be able to make these changes. I can't make these changes on my own. I think there does have to be a little pressure involved to make that happen. 5 minutes or so, we'll get things started. 5 minutes, Mr. Sinatra. We'll get things going. Hope everybody's doing well. See, people are checking in from all over the world, including ways as far away as Orlando, Florida, which is in my backyard. We've got Atlanta. Hope everything's going well in the Atlanta area. We've got folks checking in from South Africa and Connecticut and New Jersey. Thank you for being here. Texas is here. Got more Texas here. Texas is everywhere. That's just the way it works, people. Just get used to it. India checking in. Thanks for being here. We got Detroit and California and Bangladesh. We've got someone from TN, assuming that's the Tennessee. Tennessee, how y'all doing? Got Cape Cod, Massachusetts. How's the weather up in the north? I haven't checked lately. I saw the snow came through a couple weeks ago, and then I completely missed everything. So we'll figure it out. We got Virginia, Latvia, Cleveland, more Orlando. Or is it the same Orlando? Lots of Orlando. Space Coast is here too. A lot of Floridians checking in. Thanks for being here, everybody. This is super nice. What's up? In the Orlando area. I'm more the south side, I guess. Over near Disney. We've got people from all over checking in. South Africa, Sydney, London, Lakeland. So there you go. That's the way it works. We're all over with all of those. I think we are just about ready here. Sanford, north side. So we're really covering everything, I think. I think we had an east, a west, a north, and I'll take the south, so we're good. I guess it could be more southern, Orlando, but no. Close enough. I'm south enough for the Orlando area. Hope everybody's doing well. It seems like we're finally trying to pull ourselves out of the winter just a little bit here in the Northern Hemisphere. We're trying to get out of that mode and more into the springtime. But of course, first day of spring doesn't happen until what? End of this month? 20th, 21st, somewhere in there. So we have a few weeks left. I haven't kept up, but hopefully it's well. Here in Florida, of course, it's just warm already. It's in the, what is it, in the 80s today? What is the temperature? What is the thermostat telling us outside? The magic box tells me that 79 degrees. What is the high today in freedom units is 80. So we're pretty much at our peak today. To see how the rest of this goes. Oh, okay. Well, I'm very pleased with how things have been laid out and how we're working out. Chat room's looking good. Is it 30? Where is it 30? I guess is the question. I don't know, because I thought you were, no, that's not someone who was in Orlando. Clearly. I don't know. 30, what is it? 30 Celsius is, I don't know. We'll have to do the math. I used to be really good at that. In Connecticut, it is 30. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. Still a little chilly outside. Although in Connecticut, 30 degrees. Isn't that shorts weather? I would imagine. The pools aren't ready for you, but you can go outside, shoot some hoops, right? That's kind of how it works. With the, as long as you, I guess, you shovel off the court. I guess that would be good. The CompTIA AI cert. Well, I don't know. We'll have to ask the AI what they think of the cert. I haven't heard a lot of people begging for it quite yet, so we'll have to see. I guess what I'm waiting for is AI to do something. What is it doing? I hear a lot of hype. I hear a lot of it's going to change the world. Yeah, how's it going to do that? We don't know. We just know it will change the world. Well, you're going to have to be a little more specific. Give me for example, and I'm with you. I'm in. I haven't gotten the for examples yet, but maybe it'll show up soon. Maybe we'll find out shortly. Or maybe it's a lot of people running companies that are just following a fling and just sort of throwing a lot of money at things. Malk is here. Hello, Malk. Hope things are good in St. Vincent. Hope everybody's well in your neck of the woods. Speaking of getting things started, I know nobody really said that. It's we'll watch that go to 12, which means it is indeed time to get this party started. Let's bring up a keynote, which is here somewhere. Let's see if Keynote will give me a green light. It should. Green light looks good. That looks good. This looks good. I think we could do a live stream, everybody. I think it is time. We'll get rid of that lower third. And let's get things started. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2026 Professor Messer 220-1201. Let's see if I can get me in there without me in there. Let's see if I can push the buttons that everything is now not working. Everything is now locked up. There we go. What's a better, cleaner intro than that, everyone? Welcome to today's 220-1201 Core 1A Plus study group. That's how you know it's live. There's no AI here. There's no fake person talking to you. And you can tell by the way I'm stumbling over the keys. It's been so long since we've done a live stream. It is so great to have you here. This live stream, of course, will be asking you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And I will be providing you with all sorts of Q&A information, details, and things that you might want to learn about if you are indeed studying for your CompTIA A+ exam. So if you are ready to answer some questions for us, I think that might be a good place to start. Right here is on this view that's telling us if you would like to participate. If you are here indeed live and you would like to participate, you can do that right now by joining us. You pop open a new browser window and head over to this URL, professormesser.com/QA. That is the URL that we will be using throughout this study group to be able to answer the questions that will be popping up on your screen. So you just go to that one URL. That's the only place you need to be. You can stay right there and all of the questions will magically appear in front of you. You don't need any special session IDs or codes or other nonsense. You just go to professormesser.com/QA and it magically takes you to exactly where you need to be. The first question we normally do in these live streams is to find out if you are able to get into that particular connection. And you would do that by going to this link and answering what we call our rewind question. This is the only question you're going to get today that has a previous connection back to a previous study group. So you've probably seen this question before if you followed us in the past. The question that we are trying to answer is this one. A technician is installing virtualization software on a server with no existing operating system. Which of the following would best describe this hypervisor type? Before I give you the answers, keep in mind, of course, that our standing rule in the live stream is please do not answer the questions in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link that is on your screen right there, professormesser.com/QA. That will be the link that will take you to the answers. In this case, technician installing virtualization software on a server with no existing operating systems. Would this hypervisor type be cloud-based, VDI, type 1, SaaS, or containerization? So it's one of these, right? It's got to be one of those answers. If you think you know the answer, then you need to go over not to that link, to this link, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. We're going to come back to this question in just a moment and see how well you did with answering that question that is from our last month's study group. I want to thank everyone for being here. We do one of these study groups every month, but of course, we have so many other study materials out on our website. You can find it at professormesser.com. But if you would like to go directly to maybe another connection that we have, another link on social media, you can find all of our training courses. Every minute of every course is available for you to watch for free online at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have our daily A+ pop quiz questions. You can find those in your email inbox if you've signed up for them on our website. We also have links on X, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on many other places, on Facebook. Simply type in professormesser.com/LinkedIn/Facebook/X/Instagram. You get the idea. And of course, if you'd like to join us on our Discord server, it's at professormesser.com/Discord. It's very easy to find us. We're out there, and if we're not where you are, let us know where you are. Maybe we should start adding our daily pop quiz questions to that site as well. I'm more than happy to do that. Also, keep in mind that at some point during this live stream, I will be providing you with information that you can use to earn 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. This is a continuing education unit credit. This is the way that CompTIA allows you to collect credits that you can then apply towards renewal of your certification. As many of you know, once you earn your A+, it's good for 3 years, and then you either need to renew that certification or the certification goes away. We don't want it to go away. So this might be another way to keep that certification active by collecting these CEUs. There are many different ways to renew your cert. You don't have to collect CEUs, but if you are, we can help you with that. We'll talk more about this. Listen in during this first hour for the CEU codes and the way that you can earn that CEU via email. Also remind you that we will be talking today about the two current A+ exams. They are the 220-1201 and the 220-1202. These were released in March of 2025. So they're not even, almost, sort of a year old at this point, which is relatively young in the life cycle of a set of certification exams. We expect these exams to still be around for another 2.5 years. So if you are studying for this version of the exam, you're studying the right version. Make sure all of your study materials specifically say that they are the 220-1201 or the 220-1202. Both of these exams are 90 minutes each. On the 1201, you need to score a 675. This is on a scale from 100 to 900. You need to do a little bit better on the 1202. You need to score a 700 even to be able to say that you have passed those two exams. And once you pass both of those exams in whatever order you plan to take them, you are then A+ certified. Once you earn that certification, it's good, as I mentioned, for 3 years. And you can, of course, renew it. Many people do, so that you can simply renew it every 3 years and you will perpetually be A+ certified, which kind of makes it nice. At some point during the next 24 hours or so, you will also notice that the YouTube video description of this video will be updated with timestamps. There's no way to do these timestamps reliably through any type of automated means. It takes a lot more intelligence than that. That's why I have my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this on the replay. Hey, Lori. Speaking of someone who's working and trying to find all of this information and watch all of it and maybe even answer some of the questions, Lori's got it for you. So she is marking down all of these timestamps and putting them into the YouTube video description of all of our live streams so you can find the information that you need to find very, very quickly. If that's something that you've been able to use and something you like, make sure you leave a comment in this video thanking Lori for her hard work and making sure that this is done every single time we do one of these crazy live streams. So make sure you are aware of that. I mentioned earlier that we're also on Discord, which is usually where I'm hanging out when I'm not doing one of these live streams. It's a great way to network and interact with other people who are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, Security Plus, other certifications. And we also have a number of people that like to hang out who have already passed these certifications. Many of these people are already working in the industry. They can even answer questions in a more practical way about the content that you are learning during your A+ studies. It's a great way to study, and there are ways to pop open and start your own study groups that other people can join, that you can manage, or you can join one that's already been started by someone else. It's a great collaborative effort. A lot of fantastic, very smart people in this Discord. It's a really nice community. So you don't often hear that of an online community. It really is a nice online community. You can join us at professormesser.com/Discord. And eventually you will need to take your A+ exam. You can, of course, go to the CompTIA website and pay full price to take that exam. But why would you when I have exactly the same vouchers on my site? And those vouchers are available to you at a discount if you happen to be in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory. These vouchers cover any of the CompTIA sites, any of the CompTIA certifications, so you're more than welcome to purchase those vouchers and save a few bucks. Not only are you saving money, I'll even give you something you can't get anywhere else, and that's a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. I don't sell this ebook. It is only available if you purchase a voucher or you purchase one of our success bundles. This is a set of tips and tricks that I've accumulated through the years of taking my CompTIA exams and other industry certification exams that can help you with the study process, and tips and strategies that you can use during the exam itself to optimize and perhaps even get you a few extra points. You can find out all about these vouchers at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question that I mentioned earlier. That question is, a technician is installing virtualization software on a server with no existing operating system. Which of the following would best describe this hypervisor type? Would it be cloud-based, VDI, Type 1, SaaS, or containerization? We will close our poll and see how you did. And I think you did pretty well on this one because 59% of you say the answer is type 1. And if we show the correct answer, you can indeed see that is the right answer. 59% of you got that one absolutely right. This would be as compared to a type 2 hypervisor. That is one that you would install on top of an existing operating system. So for instance, if you're running Windows and you've installed some type of hypervisor or virtual system, maybe you've installed VirtualBox on top of it. Maybe you have the VMware version of the desktop client for Windows that you can run. That is a type 2 hypervisor. But there are software versions of hypervisors you can get that don't need a Windows running on that system. They don't need a Linux running on that system. You can, of course, install the hypervisor as the operating system, and then all of the other VMs will run on top of that. Those virtual machines are very useful to run on that scenario. The type 1 hypervisors, you will sometimes hear this called a bare metal hypervisor. It's a bit of a colloquial term, but it's one the industry has kind of picked up on because you don't need an operating system. You just need the bare hardware of the system, and you can take it from there to run all of those on your system. So the other options that we had are cloud-based. We're running on this server with no operating system. That is not a description of a cloud-based server. It could be running in the cloud, but that's not what this particular question is referring to. We have a VDI, the virtual desktop interface, is one that would commonly be used on the client side so that all of your client desktops exist in the cloud instead of existing on that local machine. We have SaaS, software as a service. This particular question is not referring to software that's running on that VM. It's referring to the VM hypervisor infrastructure itself. And containerization, although a very useful form of distributing software, one that I use myself, containerization is one that is not about installing virtualization software or hypervisor on a single piece of hardware. The best answer for this one, the one that best describes it, the one that really is spot on, is the type 1 hypervisor. And that is where you got 59% of you getting that one absolutely right. Well done. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, you're wondering, what do you mean bare metal type 1, type 2? What are you talking about? You can always check out our video in the 220-1201 series. That is section 4.1, and the name of the video is Virtualization Services. So another great way to bring together all of the things that can really help with what you're trying to do with a virtual environment. So well done. You got through our rewind question of the month. I think most of you are able to get in and work through these, but this is one where we need to do some new questions. And as many of you know, the first new question of a study group is always a performance-based question. This may not be a term that you're familiar with, so let me quickly tell you what the differences are. When you sit down to take your CompTIA exam, you go to the exam center, or perhaps you're taking your exam at home, you click the Start button. The very first handful of questions you get on your exam will not be multiple choice. The question we just did was a multiple choice question. We had a single question, and we have multiple options to choose from. Even if you didn't know this question or this answer, or you had no idea what I was talking about, you still had a 20% chance of getting this right. On the actual exam, you'll probably only get 4 answers, which means you'll get a 25% chance of getting this right. Well, CompTIA doesn't want you to be quite so easily guessing and getting free points, so they have a handful of questions they present to you at the beginning of the exam that are not multiple choice. That effectively is the definition of a performance-based question. Any type of question that could be asked, that is not multiple choice. That's really what it is. So this is also something that it's hard to estimate or duplicate or prepare for, because imagine there's no structure to this. A performance-based question can be a matching question. It could be a fill in the blank. They could put you at a command prompt. There could be drag and drop. They could have you put things in a particular order. There could be any way that you could ask and answer a question could effectively be a performance-based question. But if you know the exam objectives and you studied everything about the exam objectives, as I often say, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You will be able to answer it because you already know the content. So let's do a performance-based question today. I have for you today, hopefully, one that you are going to ace. I have a good feeling about this one. This one it started off as a matching question, but I got rid of the matching. So this is effectively a fill-in-the-blank question, although I will give you the information right now that tells you on the A+ exams, at least currently, you don't get any fill-in-the-blank questions. So this is really more difficult than it probably should be, but I think that isn't necessarily a bad thing. Here is our performance-based question of the month. Wow, there's a lot here. There's a lot of images on the screen. I want you, very simply, to identify the RAID type. There you go. That's your question, and we have on the screen five different RAID types. So there's quite a bit we have to walk through. This is an image-based question. So those of you listening in on the podcast side, unfortunately, it's going to be hard to describe to you exactly all of the different images that we see here. When you get to a point where you can have a look at our YouTube video, you might want to do that to be able to look at these. So here are, in fact, these are the 5 different RAID types in completeness that you need to know for your exam. This doesn't describe every possible RAID type of any type. There are many different RAID types out there, but for the purposes of your A+ exam, there are 5 major and effectively most popular RAID types that you will run into. So if you know what these are, I have RAID type A, RAID type B, RAID type C, RAID type D, and RAID type E. I want you to fill in those blanks and be able to tell me what they happen to be. As always, of course, you want to be able to use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to answer your question. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to that link right there at the bottom of the screen, which is very small now because I had to scrunch it down to be able to get everything on the screen. professormesser.com/QA. There's your link. There's the RAID types. There's a lot going on. There's lots of colors. There's things you need to know. This is one of the most important parts of this. One of the things that you definitely need to be able to do is recognize these different RAID type configurations, perhaps not only just from a performance-based question perspective, but you may get a number of multiple choice questions about RAID. So those are the things you want to be able to feel, to work through and understand. It's useful to understand from a visual perspective or a configuration perspective what they look like, how they are structured. But we also have to know what happens if we lose one of those drives. Let's say on this link, let's say we lose this drive, what happens? If we lose this drive, what happens? Then how do we recover from that? Well, that's a common type of question you would get on the exam. I think we even have a couple of questions like that in our practice exams book. So I want to be sure that we have that listed in here as well. Make sure you are familiar with all of the RAID types listed in the official CompTIA exam objectives. Let's step through each one of these RAID types and see if I have the same RAID type that you put in on this particular question. Let's step through all 5 of these. We'll start with the one that is at the upper right. This is a RAID type that has a combination of mirrors and stripes. It seems like we are striping between different mirror drives. That adds sort of redundancy to redundancy, if you will. There's a little bit of mirroring and there's a little bit of striping. And because of that, we refer to this as our RAID 10 or RAID 1+0. So if you're looking at the number 1 in the upper left that we did earlier, RAID 10, RAID 1+0 is the answer. Those terms are interchangeable. You can see we call it RAID 1+0 because we have the RAID 1, which is our mirroring, and we have RAID 0, which is our striping. We put them together, you get RAID 1+0. So to shorten that up, we call it RAID 10. That is what we are working through in this case. And if you answered RAID 10 for that first one, got that one absolutely right. In the upper right, we've got 4 striped drives, individually striped. You can see that one of those striped drives has parity associated with it. Well, if you know anything about striping and parity, then you probably already know that that is a RAID 5 configuration. That's a very common style because it is a good balance between drive availability and redundancy. We get both of those. So we're not taking away a lot of drive space, taking away a little bit of drive space to add that parity. And it's that extra parity that we're adding in that allows us to be able to then have some redundancy if we lose one of those drives, which is kind of nice. I do have some RAID 5 arrays that I have run that I did not even realize a drive had failed because the whole array was still running, the data was still available, and that's what you want for your end users, is that if you do have a physical drive failure, wouldn't it be great if they never even knew a problem existed? That's effectively our job in IT. Next on our list, let's go to the bottom left. We have these two drives, disk 1 and disk 0, that are mirrored together. That RAID type is a RAID 1 on this RAID type. And if you are someone who is setting up one of the very early RAID types, I used to have a RAID that was built into my laptop. My laptop could support 2 separate drives, and I could use the software within the laptop to be able to create a mirrored configuration so that both of those drives had exactly the same information on them. That way, if you lose a physical drive, you have a mirror of it still running. Using a lot of drive space there. Effectively, you need double the amount of drive space, or you might want to say you only have half of the available space available from both of those drives to be able to run a RAID 1 configuration. Next on our list is also a striped configuration, but instead of having one parity on these drives, we have multiple parities that are available on these drives. This means we could lose potentially 2 separate drives, and that would be defined as RAID 6. That is the RAID 6 format, and that is another one that's probably, if you've gone through the years with CompTIA's certifications, you'll know that RAID 6 was a recent addition to the official exam objectives, probably because we're seeing much more RAID 6 being used out there. Makes sense to add that to the list. And our last RAID type looks like 2 single physical drives. We have a striping between these drives, which means the information is split and stored separately across both of those drives. That would be a RAID 0. With RAID 0, there is 0 redundancy. So if we lose a drive with RAID 0, our entire array is now unavailable because you've effectively deleted half of your data. There's no way to recover from that. You'd have to replace the physical disk and then restore from a backup just to be able to have that available. So those are the 5 different RAID types that I want you to know about. This is the one that I think if you're working through the details of RAID, it's useful to understand visually what they look like and how to recover from these. And if you're wondering where you would find out more about this, stay tuned. We're going to find out sooner than you might have expected to be able to understand RAID type. Hopefully you did well with this. If not, you may want to check out our section on RAID to learn more about it. And if you are someone who would like to learn something more about RAID, then you probably would be able to answer this question. I thought I would do a follow-up for you. Our follow-up question is about RAID. And this question says, well, I say this question says, I don't have, in fact, as I'm looking through the questions I have here, I moved it. I think I moved it so it wouldn't be right there in the middle of our view. So I'm not even going to give you this question. I am instead going to give you a different question, not necessarily a RAID question, but I think we could do something where you might want to go into more details about working through a data center. We're going to come back to RAID in just a moment to find out more about this. Let's do a question about data centers. This question about data centers says, to access a data center, employees place their phones next to the door to unlock. Which of the following technologies is being used? Well, this is one that you might even be using in your work environment. Would those be NFC, 802.11, Bluetooth, Lightning, or hotspot? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Follow that link to answer the question. The question again asks, to access a data center, employees place their phones next to the door to unlock. Which of the following technologies is being used? Is it NFC, 802.11, Bluetooth, Lightning, or hotspot? All 5 of these are real technologies that you would probably find in any type of environment, but this is one where you have to choose which one would be used in this. In fact, I would say for this question, I could reasonably say there are at least 3 different ones that I could choose for this answer. Three different options could technically provide functionality that is described in this question, but only one really describes what's being used. So you have to really make sure you read through these questions and understand the details of it as you step through all of the different requirements for each of these. Each question is its own world. You don't want to read more into the question than what is listed. You don't want to think back to other questions that were referenced to be able to understand any of this. You want to just look at this question, only the topics and information contained within this question, and then apply the available answers to that. This exam at times can be somewhat of a reading comprehension exam, while on the top of that, asking you all about technical things. So you have to be ready for both of those. So it's important that you understand sort of the cadence and the flow of how these questions are asked during an actual exam. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, to access a data center, employees place their phones next to the door to unlock. Which of the following technologies is being used? Is it NFC, 802.11, Bluetooth, Lightning, or hotspot? Well, how did you answer? Let's find out. We will close our poll, and a big number, what I was hoping for in the question like this, 96% of you say the answer is NFC. That is the answer that tells us the near field communication is being used in this environment to be able to unlock the door by simply putting your phone very close to it, which is sort of nice. Now, the reason I said there were other technologies that could have fit into this is that there are other applications, tools, technologies that could potentially allow you to unlock a door from across the room or across the globe. For example, many of us have garage doors that we can open with our phone, so maybe we could use 802.11 to connect to the internet, which then would allow us to unlock a door with our phone. But in this case, we have to be really close to the phone. We have to be really close to the door. As you can see, the question says we're placing our phone next to the door to make that happen. So it probably would not be 802.11. Bluetooth isn't commonly used for this either. Bluetooth commonly does not have any type of security based around it. You would rely on the application for that, and not every device has Bluetooth associated with it or even has Bluetooth enabled. NFC is a technology that has to be very close to that device to be able to use it. It will send a lot of data over that very close connection, and very often it's built into your phone so that you can have an authentication process that occurs that allows you to access your phone, and only once you've authenticated into your phone does that NFC function work. So in many ways, it's a multi-factor authentication. We have to first unlock the phone, and then since we have the phone itself, that's what we're using to gain physical access to the door. This would have helped me a lot when I would always leave my access badge at home, and I'm driving into work, I'm pulling into the parking lot, and I look down and I don't have my card. I realized, nope, we got to turn it around. We're going back home or picking up our badge just so we can come back to work and get everything done that we need to have done. That is a great technology to use, and that's one of the reasons that we use this. We tend to have our phone with us wherever we go. It's unusual to leave your phone at home, but I would imagine I could do that too. So I would imagine that would be something I would very commonly do, is leave my phone at home. So hopefully you're not leaving your phone. You're using that because you're using near field communication. I've already mentioned 802.11 isn't necessarily, we have to be close to the door, so 802.11 wouldn't be used. Bluetooth isn't commonly used for this either. That's also another one that we could use from across the room if we had to. But in this case, we had to be next to the door. We had to be right there next to the door to be able to unlock. That really does mean NFC. Lightning is a type of connection used primarily by Apple devices. We don't see much Lightning being used any longer, but you will find a number of legacy devices may still have Lightning connections on there, primarily based on Apple and iOS type devices, iPads, iPad OS. The newer iPhones and iPads, of course, have USB-C. So we're seeing less and less Lightning connections as time goes by. And a hotspot describes a way to share an internet connection using a cellular connection to a cellular provider. Doesn't really talk about placing your phones next to the door. So in this case, NFC is the only one here that makes any sense, primarily because we needed a phone and we needed that phone to be very close to the door to be able to answer or to be able to unlock the door and indeed be able to answer this particular question. NFC was right. 96% of you got that one. You knew what the answer was. That was exactly what we were looking for. We've talked about a lot of different topics already. There's been topics of RAID. We've described connections, wireless connections, and many different types of wireless connections. All 5 of those types are connection types we need to understand when we are taking our Core 1 exam. There is a lot in there associated with this. And one of the things that you'll often find is that you'll watch some of the videos, but maybe you don't have time to watch all of the videos. But it would be nice if you had access to all of that information while you were watching the video. Well, that's why I created my course notes. My course notes contain every bit of text, all of the important graphics, all of the tables that I have in all of my courses, including some of the images themselves. So you got a nice view of the things that you would normally have within the videos. They follow the same format as the videos. They have the same content as the videos. And you can see in our course notes, this is the PDF version of the course notes. All of the text from the videos is there. All of the details from what we are doing is in there. So this is a great way to be able to understand what the differences are between the videos. You can follow along with the video. You can, if you've missed any of the videos, you can also go through those videos and now catch up on the things you might have missed. We have a lot there in these course notes. They are a great way to study and be able to have everything there. We not only have Core 1 course notes, we have Core 2 course notes as well. They're available online, and you can choose to either get the digital edition, that's the PDF version that you saw on the screen here. I also have physical editions. These are the printed books. Indeed, some people like to have those printed books. They're kind of handy to carry along with you wherever you might be. Don't ever have bad signal strength when you're reading through a physical book. I get it. One of the advantages of getting the physical book, though, is you're going to have this and be able to take it everywhere you go, but you have to wait to have this delivered. So if you purchase the physical book, you get access to the digital edition immediately after purchase. So you can download that and use that for your studies while you're waiting on your physical book to arrive. Those course notes are available at my website. Either follow the main link on the Professor Messer website, or you can go to professormesser.com/1201 notes. Let's do some more questions. We have more to go through. The next question on our list is a firewall question. Of course it is. There's a lot of good firewall stuff that we are doing. I, of course, have a big background in firewalls, so I like these types of questions. This question asks, a firewall is blocking all NTP traffic. Which of the following would be most affected by this security policy? Would it be database backups, automatic IP addressing, web server load balancing, network print services, or log file synchronization? One of the things about these abbreviations we get on our exams is that we have to not only know what the abbreviation means, but we have to know how to apply it. So that is the important part of this, is really understanding the details of how we would apply these things. And this is a good question to ask about the application of a specific protocol or specific port number. Make sure you're familiar with these. And this is how we really have to think about when we're making a change on the network. What would this change be affecting? It's affecting more than just a protocol or a port number. It's affecting a way to perform a function or a way to have an application flow. So make sure you're familiar with these too. Be important to think about as you are deciding what the right answer might be on this list. This is one of those where it's very useful to be able to break things down into these multiple levels on the exam, because the actual exam really does ask the same thing of you. It's never a direct question. And very rarely, if ever, will you see on your exam, what does NTP stand for? You may have even studied that. Turns out the exam doesn't really care about that so much. What they really care about is, what would you do with that? How does that work for you? What is important about that technology? How is it integrated into the rest of your network? So as you're going through these topics on your exam objectives, make sure you stretch a little beyond just a rote memorization of the technology, and you really understand how we are using that technology. That's one of the reasons I put a lot of examples and a lot of case studies in our course so that you could see, oh, here's how we would use that to be able to perform a function on our network. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a firewall is blocking all NTP traffic. Which of the following would be most affected by this security policy? Would it be database backups, automatic IP addressing, web server load balancing, network print services, or log file synchronization? And we have 56% of us that say the answer is log file synchronization. But we have 15% said network print services, effectively a tie at 14% say automatic IP addressing, and then single digits, 9% said web server load balancing, and 6% said database backup. So we did have a bit of a rainbow on that one, but we did have a majority. 56% of you did choose log file synchronization, and that is the answer that we were looking for, was log file synchronization. So first we have to understand a firewall's blocking NTP traffic. What in the world is NTP traffic? Well, NTP is the network time protocol. Now, if we knew that, we could have potentially answered this question. So that's another way to think about doing this. But we often don't even think about NTP because it's so automatic. You turn on your computer and it seems to know what the time of day is. It seems to be very precise. In fact, if you look at your phone, the time is already on your phone. Have you ever set the time on your phone? You have not. I doubt any one of us have ever set the time on our phone because the phone just sets the time automatically. Same thing with our computers. Whether you're running Windows or Linux or Mac OS, the clock is always correct. And that's because we have a special protocol whose job it is to make sure that every device has the right time on it. Now, why would we want that? Why would we need that? Well, if you look at your encryption technologies, things like Kerberos need all of these devices to be within 5 minutes of each other, or the encryption doesn't work. So you aren't able to log in to your Windows network unless your clock is right. We often don't think about that part of it, but that's an important thing to consider. And NTP ensures that we have the right time on our system, and then everybody's able to log in just fine. Same thing for backups and log timestamps. We have timestamps in everything that we are using. If you think about Windows servers, routers, switches, firewalls, VPN concentrators, and much, much more, all of these devices are collecting logs. Very important logs, not only for understanding what has happened with that device in the past, but these can be very good for security purposes and understanding when did someone log in, when did somebody log out, what did they do when they were logged in. All of that information is logged somewhere. Well, we want to bring all those logs back to a central point. So I want to compare my router logs with my switch logs, with my server logs. All of those timestamps need to be synced up, because if you try to correlate between log files and one of the log files is 15 minutes off and the other log file is 7 minutes off, you'll never be able to figure this out. You'll never be able to know what the right answer might be with this. So we need some type of method to keep all of those timestamps correct across all of those devices. Even those devices may not talk to each other inherently. We may need to bring all of that back to a centralized log consolidation server. And in that particular instance, we need to make sure that those log files are synchronized up. So if we're talking about timestamps, database backups, well, don't really need timestamps to back up a database. You might back it up at a different time of the day, but that's not a huge problem. We could, of course, still have our daily backups. So database backups will probably not be most affected when you compare it to the other things on this screen. Automatic IP addressing is probably not going to be changed at all. In fact, we will assign an automatic IP address to a device using DHCP, regardless of what the time on the device happens to be. DHCP does not care what time it is. It doesn't care what time is set on your system. It will assign the IP addresses with no problem at all. We also have web server load balancing. Load balancing, very useful, but again, load balancing isn't looking at our timestamps either. It's just making sure that we are able to take the service request coming in and apply that service response going out. So load balancing would not really be affected by the wrong time on our system. Network print services also probably would not be affected very much by the wrong time. In fact, you probably have a print server somewhere that wasn't configured properly for NTP, and it might even have a different time associated with it. Doesn't matter. It will work just fine, even though it really doesn't know what day it is or what time it is, at least not with any level of accuracy. And the one thing in this entire list that would suffer greatly if different devices had different times on them would be the synchronization of these log files, because the only way to synchronize these is by the timestamp. There's no real other way that you could synchronize across all of those different, very diverse systems with different log file formats and different operating systems. The really one standard centralized metric that we can take all of them and coordinate together is the time of day. And so that log file synchronization, if the times were wrong, it would be a mess to try to synchronize all of those log files. So you want to be sure NTP is working properly on your servers, on your switches, on your routers, on your firewall, on your VPN concentrator, and everything else as well, because those would certainly be affected if NTP was blocked to those devices. They would have absolutely the wrong time. You'd have the data, but how would you ever correlate the data against a different log file? That synchronization is an incredibly important part of that, and the 56% of you knew that and got it absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do another question. Next on our list is, during the startup process, a computer displays a text-based error message before the Windows logo appears. Which of the following is most likely responsible for this message? Is it DHCP, Post, EULA, AAA, or HSM? Again, with the abbreviations and the acronyms. During the startup process, a computer displays a text-based error message before the Windows logo appears. Which of the following is most likely responsible for this message? Is it DHCP, Post, EULA, AAA, or HSM? Do you think you know what it is? A lot of people think they know what it is, and they got it in quick. And this makes me think we either got it really correct or we might be really wrong. We're going to find out in a moment. See if you know what the answer is. If you think you do, please know answers in the chat room. You can go to ProfessorMester.com/QA to lock in your answer. I will also remind you that in our after show coming up immediately after this, I will be answering your questions. If you have a question for me, you can submit that question at any time using that same link, ProfessorMester.com/QA. You'll see a link at the top of the screen, a tab, and you can flip over and be able to ask a question of me. So you're not only answering questions, you can also be asking questions at the same time. Lock in your answer. Go to ProfessorMester.com/QA to lock it all in. See if you know what it happens to be. Some of you were talking earlier in the chat room about garage doors and how garage doors would be NFC, wouldn't they? Not the garage door I have. I don't think any garage doors really use NFC in a home environment. It uses 802.11. It's all cloud-based. So, which is good and it's bad. You know, you have the ability to have Amazon come by, open your garage door, put your packages inside, and close your garage door because it's all connected using 802.11. Wireless connectivity in your garage door. For better or worse, we certainly have it. Let's see how we did with this one. During the startup process, a computer displays a text-based error message before the Windows logo appears. This could be a lot of things, couldn't it? Which of the following is most likely responsible for this message? Is it DHCP, Post, EULA, AAA, and HSM? What did you answer? Let's find out. We're going to close our poll, and we can see that 84%, a strong number, say the answer is Post. But we also have 6% for HSM, 5% for EULA, 3% for DHCP, and 2% for AAA. This is the challenge we have when we're starting up a system. You may have even seen this happen where an error message appears on the screen and then suddenly it disappears as the rest of the operating system is loading. That's a bit of a challenge. And one of the ways that we're able to see that error message, you get more information on that error message, is to go to the source of what created the error message to begin with. And almost always, it's going to be your BIOS, the basic input-output system. Well, that wasn't one of the options we had. We had DHCP, POST, EULA, AAA, and HSM. I know, I'm getting to this part of it. But the basic input-output system of your computer is really the core software that gets everything going. It effectively bootstraps your computers, we like to say in the industry. It's the thing that gets everything running, regardless of what operating system you may be running. You may be running Mac OS, you might be running Linux, you might be running Windows, you could be running a lot of different operating systems, but something has to get your computer going, and it's your basic input-output system that does it. These days, we have fancy input-output systems, but it's effectively responsible for initiating and starting up and making sure that your CPU is configured and installed in your system. It checks to make sure that you have memory in your system and that memory is responding. It's a very quick test that's performed of your hardware prior to launching the operating system. Because if you don't have a CPU, there's no reason you would need to start an operating system. If your memory isn't working, you probably don't need to start an operating system. If it can't find a keyboard on your system, we don't need to start the OS. So the process of performing this test prior to getting things going is really the power on self-test. So when you first start your computer, this is that very quick hardware diagnostic that occurs that just is a very cursory check of these very important pieces of hardware. And if all of those pieces of hardware are working properly, it continues with the loading of the operating system. But if there are any problems with this, if there are issues with the memory, if there's something unusual with the configuration of the CPU, if something has changed, some of these BIOS systems recognize when the case has been opened as a security control. So if somebody opens the case and then closes it back up and you restart your computer, your BIOS can give you a message, an error message at the beginning saying something here has changed. You need to really check and make sure nobody went into this computer and did something they were not supposed to. That is the power on self-test that does that. The power on self-test is exactly what you would use for that. Hopefully you are familiar with the POST process. I would think most of you are, because 84% of you said the answer was POST, and you'd be absolutely right. That is the answer that we were looking for. And that is the thing that you would commonly see when you start up your computer. You may not even realize that's happening behind the scenes, but a lot of things happen prior to loading that Windows. Now, these other options that are here, like DHCP, what about that? DHCP is something we might want to think about. The BIOS does not always, if ever, load up the DHCP to get an IP address. There are times when you can configure a BIOS in the diagnostic portion of it, especially with a UEFI BIOS, to be able to use DHCP, but very commonly it waits for the operating system to do that. So it would probably not be DHCP that's giving us an error message. The end user license agreement, isn't it great that we don't have to worry about that during the boot process? Can you imagine all of your users having to agree to a EULA every time they started their computer? You're not going to get any calls to the help desk about that one, are you? So thankfully we don't. We don't have to worry about the EULA. It doesn't pop up during the startup process, and it's not going to give a text-based error message relating to the end user license agreement. AAA is how we talk about the authentication, authorization, and accounting functionality, very commonly done when you are logging into a system. But in this case, AAA, not the answer we were looking for. In fact, we're not even that far yet. We're only just booting our computer. We're not even at a point where we're trying to authenticate, authorize, or account for any type of content on our network. And an HSM, a hardware security module, commonly used to store important information that needs to, usually encryption-enabled information, but not something you would commonly find happening in the startup process of a computer. In this case, POST is what we were looking for. 84% of you got that one absolutely right, and you got it spot on. That's the answer that we were looking for. Let's do another question. We'll get this next one going. I want to be sure we get in as many as we can. Next on our list, you guys did really well on that one. Let's see how you do on this one. I got a good feeling about this one as well. The question asks, an organization requires a high level of security and complete control over its hardware devices to meet strict regulatory standards. Which of the following cloud deployment models should the organization implement to follow these guidelines? Would it be metered cloud, public cloud, SaaS cloud, internal cloud, or multi-tenant cloud? Got a few cloud questions we would need to break through. Let's see how we do with this one. An organization requires a high level of security and complete control over its hardware devices to meet strict regulatory standards. Which of the following cloud deployment models should the organization implement to follow these guidelines? Would it be a metered cloud, public cloud, SaaS cloud, internal cloud, or a multi-tenant cloud? Cloud. These cloud questions, section 4. That domain 4 is an important one. You do need to understand the differences. All of these answers, by the way, are technologies and terms you need to be familiar with. I didn't make these up. So make sure you not only know what the right answer is, make sure you know about the wrong answers as well, because those could appear on your exam as another question. So these are things, all of these are important to consider. If you don't recognize any of these terms or you're a little iffy on how that term is implemented in an actual enterprise network, please make a note of it. That'll be some extra study for you after we are done here today. Pretty important and useful to know about. Make sure you are familiar with these. See how you do. A lot of people have already locked in their question, so I think we can go right to the answers on these to see how well we do. The question again asks, an organization requires a high level of security and complete control over its hardware devices to meet strict regulatory standards. Which of the following cloud deployment models should the organization implement to follow these guidelines? Would it be a metered cloud, a public cloud, a SaaS cloud, an internal cloud, or a multi-tenant cloud? Let's close our poll and see how you did with this one. Again, a big number, 68% of you say the answer is an internal cloud. But is it? Because we have double digits, 15% of you say SaaS. The SaaS cloud is the one we want. 10% said a metered cloud. We have 6% said multi-tenant. Only 2% said public. I think most of you were sort of on the right track with this one, with that 68% saying internal cloud. Got it absolutely correct. That's the answer that we were looking for because of these very specific requirements. If you work for a governmental agency, or you work for an agency or an organization that deals with very sensitive data, you may not be able to put that data out into a publicly available or at least publicly accessible cloud platform. This may be something where that data may not be allowed to leave the building. You may have to make sure that if you're storing that data, it is stored in your building itself. That's not an unusual thing to consider. And if that's the case, then you probably want to set up you don't want to use Amazon's cloud. Obviously, anyone could potentially gain access to data that is in the Amazon cloud because it is publicly available. If they found some way around your security controls, they could potentially gain access to that data. That is certainly something that is not the goal with this. You want to be sure nobody has access to this data. You want a cloud functionality, though, but you don't have access to Amazon. You can't use Microsoft. You can't use some other cloud source. Well, how could you still have the advantages of a cloud platform, but still have all of your data and all of your hardware internal within your organization? We're going to use a private cloud. It's going to be a cloud that is internal to our organization that only we will have access to. That's why it's private. It's our cloud. We're just going to make sure that all of our cloud works with this. So make sure you understand the differences between a public cloud and a private cloud. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as an external cloud and an internal cloud. Certainly something you can do. But these cloud technologies are not unique to Amazon. They're not specific or something unique to the folks at Microsoft or Azure. This is a cloud technology you could run in your own platforms on your own hardware inside of your own building. And a lot of companies do that so that they have more control and more access of their private data and maybe only have their publicly facing applications in the public cloud or what they may refer to as the external cloud. Obviously, there are differences in getting these clouds up and running. With Amazon, you click a few buttons and you're on a cloud server. With Azure, you can click a few buttons and you got an Azure server. But on an internal cloud, you don't have any buttons to click yet. You need the actual hardware. So it may take a little bit more money and effort and infrastructure to get your internal cloud up and running, but that's your trade-off. That's the balance. Although it may be a little more expensive to get that up and running, all of the data remains inside of your building, and that might be worth the money to your organization. What about these other answers that we had? We obviously had 68% of you with the right answer on this one. A metered cloud describes how the cloud access is billed. So this is a question about how much money do we have to pay to use the cloud. On many cloud-based services, you might find there's a flat fee. So if you have a storage service that you use, maybe you use Google Drive, and you pay $25 a month for a certain amount of Google Drive space. And you can use all of that space every month. You can pull files from it. You can write files. You can delete files. You can modify things. You can do as much as you want with that drive space, and it's exactly the same amount of money every month. But some cloud services like AWS on Amazon, like Azure and other cloud services, is more of a pay-as-you-go. So the more of the cloud service you use, the more you will get billed through this metered cloud billing system. We've already talked about the differences between a public cloud and a private or internal cloud, so it wouldn't be either of those. We have a SaaS cloud, software as a service. Software as a service is really describing the way that we are using an application. And almost always with software as a service, that application is one hosted in a public cloud to be able to do that, but that's not a requirement. But it also doesn't describe the requirements that we have here. Just because it is software as a service doesn't mean that it is private or internal. It also doesn't mean that it is external or public. This is something referring to the way the application works and not the way the infrastructure is necessarily built. And lastly, we have a multi-tenant cloud. This would be a cloud where multiple organizations could work together to build their own cloud services. This would not be quite the security we were looking for with this question, which really was one where it was only within our organization. We weren't sharing those cloud services with anyone else, so it would not be multi-tenant. In this case, internal cloud was the one we were looking for, and 68% of you got that one absolutely correct. If you are watching these videos for continuing education unit credit, I would love to give you an email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that CEU is you would go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. It means you go out to professormesser.com, click the link that says Contact Us. In that Contact Us form, please put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put March 2026 Core 1 A+, or something similar to that, so I know where you were when you wrote this. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month: internal cloud, metered cloud. Those are the super secret code words of the month. No longer too super secret, however. They're now less super secret than they were moments ago. So here's the process again. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, and in that Contact Us form, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put March 2026 Core 1A+. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month: internal cloud, metered cloud. Both of those need to be in there. And if you want to put any other information in there, any other text, tell me how your studies are going. Tell me about the exam that you're planning to take and when you're planning to take it. I do like to read through those as well. You're more than welcome to add more information to that or not. Just click the send button. I know what to do from there. I got it. So we'll figure it out once we get to that point. Feel free to send that to me. It takes me about a week to turn these around. This week's a little bit chaotic. It might take a little more. We'll find out. But be patient. I will get these back to you as soon as possible. Do not worry. This will be something we're able to get to you. Make sure you submit those. You can submit those whether you're watching this on the live stream or whether you're watching this on the replay. The important thing is you must have that email from me to be able to submit this to CompTIA, especially if you are watching this on a replay. That's CompTIA's requirements for submitting a CEU. I realize not everybody is using CEUs to renew. Some of you are using Certmaster CE. You might be taking a higher level exam. That's okay. This is for the folks that are collecting CEUs. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, or you haven't obtained your A+ certification yet, then none of this really applies to you yet either. But for those of you that are looking to renew, it's at least another option that we can bring to the table for you. Hopefully that's something that can help you as you are trying to keep your A+ certification up to date. And who doesn't want to be able to do that? One of the things that we've talked about so far today are questions and the exam itself. So one of the things that I like to talk about also with you is a way to prepare. You obviously need a good course, a good video course to step through. A lot of people like watching videos instead of reading books. I get it. And that's worked well for us. But sometimes you would like to get a good book. And of course, we recommend that you get a good book to go along with the videos. We have a good book from CompTIA that we have on our website. That's something you might want to have in conjunction with the videos that you're watching. I also recommend you get a lot of good hands-on. The Core 1 exam, not necessarily a lot of hands-on content, but certainly on the Core 2, there is a lot of hands-on that you might want to work through. And that's another thing you might want to think about doing, is getting a little bit more hands-on, some labs to work through. We offer a number of labs on our site that might work for you, especially those from CompTIA. The Certmaster labs are discounted and on our site. But eventually you might want to test yourself. Once you've gone through that process, how do you know if you've really learned the content? Well, you need some questions and some answers to be able to see how well you may have retained that information. And one of the things that we've created is another book, a practice exams book, that can help you through this process. It can help you with these practice questions. When I started looking at the available practice questions that were out there in the world, I found a lot of shortcomings, unfortunately. I found a lot of out-of-date questions. I found a lot of very well-known published authors that are publishing well out-of-date questions in their practice lists. Well, that doesn't help anybody. In fact, I hear a lot of people say, those were some hard questions. Well, I bet they were, since they were asking you about topics you had no idea were on the exam. That doesn't really help anybody for preparation. So you need a set of practice questions that have been specifically written for the exam version that you're taking. It would also be nice if you had some questions that were written in the same style and the same tone as the actual exam. That's something that's rare to find online. And I will also say, sadly, a lot of the questions I found online were just wrong. Whether they were questions created by some AI. AI gets questions wrong constantly. It is a horrible way to study practice questions because it gets so much so wrong so often. I think that's a good tagline for AI in general. So why don't we look at getting a set of questions that really have been created for this version of the exam, have a similar style and a similar tone, more importantly, written by someone who knows what they're doing and can really give you the right answer. Those are our practice exams. And if you want to get an example of them, I happen to have one here. Let's go through one, shall we? I have my practice exams book right here. I have the PDF version on the screen. Let's step through this one to see what we think the answer might be. The question asks, in this case, this is question A85. What page is this on? And this is on let's not step through the whole thing, shall we? 85. Well, I'm flipping around all over the place on my screen. Question A85 on my, that's one of the things I need to zoom into or out of. Would be nice to have on your screen too. 85 is on page 28 of my book, and it asks, a workstation has been assigned an AP/IPA address. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this assignment? Would it be that the workstation is not connected to the wireless network? Would it be that the DNS server is misconfigured? Would it be that the network is using public internet addresses? Or is it that the DHCP server is down? One of those would be the reason for that. Now, we don't have anything online to click through. We aren't using the QA process we're using with our previous questions, and we're not answering in the chat room. We're not getting any hints in the chat room. But let's step through how you would work through this particular question. We have a lot of things we can do. Because this is a PDF, we don't have to be connected to the internet. We can simply go through this process and begin clicking through the different options. Maybe there are different topics we can annotate on our screen. Maybe we could even use different colors since we are in a PDF, and we could see that there's different items and different questions and different topics we might want to highlight with each one of these questions. One of the things I find important with these is trying to find the right answer as we are going through the process. And of course, I give you the answers in the book. We can either look at page 31 to get our quick answers. That will simply tell you if the answer is A, B, C, or D. But very often we want more information about the question and the answers themselves. One of the things I find a lot when I'm online with the online questions from other sources is I'll answer a question and it will tell me the question is wrong. And then that's it. It just kind of leaves me hanging. I don't know why I got the question wrong. It didn't help me understand why I got the question wrong. And it gave me no comparison as to why this is wrong and the other question is right. So in my book, every question has a detail page. This detail page is on page 122. I told you we're on page 28. One of the things I hate in a PDF is scrolling through trying to find a page that I'm looking for. So in my book, I made links on every single question. And if you want to go to page 122, you simply mouse over where it says the details 122, and you click, and it takes us right to page 122. And again, there's our question right at the top, and it tells us the answer is D, the DHCP server is down. And like many questions you might find other places, it tells us why the right answer is right. If we're not connected to if we're connected to the network and we're not able to do that, then that gives you a challenge. That's a little bit of an issue trying to get to that server. So that's why we probably were assigned an IP address that's something outside the scope of DHCP. But as I mentioned, when you get a question wrong, that's a great learning opportunity. That's a great chance to make myself smarter. Well, we try to do that. So every incorrect answer in our book is documented. So if you answered B, the DNS server is misconfigured, I explained to you why that is not the right answer. If you answered A, I explained to you why that's not the right answer. If you answered C, you know now why that's not the right answer. And let's say you went through this entire set of questions and you don't even know what I'm talking about. You don't know what API-PA is. You don't know what DNS is. You don't know what DHCP, how it fits into this. That's okay. At the very bottom of this particular explanation for this question, I list out the video that was used to create this question. So if you go to my course 220.12.01, Objective 2.6, Assigning IP Addresses, that will take you to the video that explains this. And of course, I have links on the screen too that are hyperlinks that you can open up, and it will open up to the video page that explains it. So you can watch the entire video and then come back to your PDF. And now, oh, that's what API-PA is. That's why we were assigned this. Now I can answer this question, and you're that much smarter for going through the process. Now that we're done with this question, my PDF reader, and probably your PDF reader as well, has a back button option in it. It may be a keystroke or it may be on the screen itself. Mine literally has a back arrow. And if I click the back arrow on my screen, it goes back to where I started. So I can simply go to the next question that's in my book and keep the entire process going. Of course, if you have the printed book, it's very easy to flip back to that very page. It's obviously an identical version. And again, if you purchase the physical edition, I print this and send this to you on demand. And while you're waiting for it to arrive, you can, of course, download this digital edition and start using it immediately. It's a nice benefit if you happen to get the physical edition of our books. Those are our practice exam books. Hopefully that gives you an idea how this can help you. Each book has in it 3 separate 90-question practice exams. Each one of these exams has 5 performance-based questions and 85 multiple-choice questions. So you get a good mix that's very similar to what you might find on the actual exam. So this is a great way to maybe keep up with your studies, see how well you know the content you need to know, and really test yourself and see if you're ready to take the exam. Now, how do you know what will be asked of you? This is a question I get quite a bit, where someone might say, how do I know if I'm ready to take the exam if I don't do questions? Or how do I know that API-PA is going to show up on my exam? We had a question earlier in the chat, earlier in the session, where people were asking questions of, is this on the exam? Is this on the exam? What about this topic? Is that on the exam? Well, there's one place you can go to really determine if it's on the exam or not, and that's CompTIA's official exam objectives. They list out for you every single topic you need to know to pass this exam. This is a great document, and it's free to download from the CompTIA website. It can be sometimes difficult to find it on the CompTIA website, so I've created a link for you that will take you directly to the page, and I provide you with a graphic showing you where you will see this on the page. And if you don't see it, I give some explanations as to why you may not be seeing it on the page. So go to professormesser.com/objectives for a very quick way to find these sets of exam objectives on the CompTIA website. The objectives themselves, here's the front page of the objectives. The objectives themselves give you an overview of the exam, but the important and very probably most useful part to me is it breaks down every domain and it tells you every single bullet you need to know. I've had people show up in my chat and they go, I've got these 150 port numbers that I'm trying to memorize. Boy, it sure is a lot. 150 port numbers are really difficult. And I tell them, why are you studying 150 port numbers? There's like 20, and they're listed in the exam objectives one by one. This is the only set of port numbers you need to know for the exam. Very rarely, if ever, does CompTIA go outside the scope of these. It is so rare that I will tell you, if you go through this entire list and you know every single one of these bullets, and you can explain to yourself or to someone else what every single one of these bullets is referring to and how it fits into the bigger world of IT infrastructure, you're going to pass your exam with no problem because you've studied every single topic that could potentially show up on your exam. Even if CompTIA went off scope, they went off the script a little bit, they asked you something outside of what these exam objectives provided, there might be one question that might go outside that scope. That's not going to hurt you because you know everything else that is in these objectives. This is a extremely important document when you start your studies. It's a very important document to use as a checklist when you're ready to finish your studies. And as I mentioned, it's free from the CompTIA website. You go to professormesser.com/objectives, and I give you links to go over there and find the objectives and download them today so that you will be more prepared for your exam when you walk into that door. We do one of these study groups every month. Our next study group will be on Friday. As we're sitting here today, it is March the 3rd, a Tuesday, and we will be reconvening on Friday the 6th, an unusual Friday study group. But again, as I mentioned, my schedule this month, a little bit chaotic, and that is a great place to go to find out more right here at the bottom of the screen, professormesser.com/calendar. I keep it up to date all the time with what our calendar will be. We also this month have a Network Plus study group on Wednesday the 11th, and then we get another Friday study group on the 20th of March. That's our Security Plus study group. Our next Core 1 study group will be in April, on April the 7th. We also have our second next Core 2 on the 9th, but I've already got those April dates already set up. You can certainly go to our calendar and find out about those as well. We've gone through an hour of Q&A already. Can you believe it? Well, don't worry. We have more Q&A to come. In this case, however, you're asking me the questions. It's our after show coming up next. If you haven't submitted your question for the after show, you can do it at any time by going to professormesser.com/QA. Don't forget also that I have vouchers on my site, the same vouchers that are available on the CompTIA website, because I am a platinum partner of CompTIA. They allow me to sell these vouchers to you at a little bit of a discount. And who doesn't like a discount on their vouchers? Again, it's the same thing you could get from the CompTIA website without paying the CompTIA prices. professormesser.com/vouchers. Don't forget about our course notes, our practice exams, our success bundles. They are all there on our website. And of course, if you're on social media, we try to be where you are. If you're on a social media site we're not, please let me know. The way you'd find us would be to go to professormesser.com/ the name of the place you'd like to find us. So professormesser.com/YouTube, /X, /Facebook, /LinkedIn. There are a lot of different options you can go with there, but lots there to work through. And as I mentioned, if we're not in the place that you are, make sure you tell me so that I can be there as well. I want to be where you guys are hanging out at the professormesser.com/ the name of that site. Hopefully we're one of those that you'd like to visit. Be a great place to go. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour, but stick around for the second hour where I'm going to be answering your questions in what we call our after show. Thank you so much for joining us on the study group. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's quickly revert. Let's see if I can find the right buttons to get us back to where we started. Look at that. It worked, everybody. We made it back to this side of the screen. You guys had great questions in the first part of the study group. At this point, though, we're going to do something a little bit different. This whole time, I've been asking you the questions, as I mentioned. Now I want you to ask me the questions. And that's exactly what we are going to do in our after show. We're going to go through the process of going through all the questions that you have submitted. Those questions are available on this. You can submit these at the same link that we have been using this whole time. It is, I guess if I got this set up on the screen, we'd be able to see it. You can submit questions for this second hour at any time. Some of you may have already submitted some questions. I'm going to moderate those questions on this side, and then we'll answer some of the questions you have. These can be questions about certifications. They can be about IT. They could be about what I had for breakfast. I don't commonly answer those questions. We kind of stick with the important questions in here. I don't know. My breakfast might be horribly important to you. I don't think that's necessarily true, but I will be glad to ask, at least look through the questions that you were submitting. You don't have to necessarily have any here, but I'll be glad to do that and be able to work through all of the details. There were some questions in this list there that came through, and I saw a couple of these in the chat where people were talking about, when am I going to update my A+ course? When am I going to update my Network Plus course? Well, there haven't been updates to those exam objectives, so there's no plans to update either of those at the moment because nothing has changed with the expectations that CompTIA has provided for those. Very rarely, only once in the last 15 or 20 years, has CompTIA changed objectives in the middle of that 3.5-year cycle. And it turned out to be just a mess. It really created a lot of chaos. So I think CompTIA realized, let's not change anything. When they release a set of objectives, they don't tend to change it for the lifetime of that certification. So the Network Plus certification, in fact, maybe I should give you real dates so you can work with these. I guess that's up to me to actually have the right things on my screen. I need to find these on my notes. Let's talk about timeframes for these different, I guess most important thing to think about would be the retirement dates for these certifications. The A+ certification, the 1201 and 1202, as we mentioned at the top of the hour, this latest set, the 1201 and 1202, were released in March of 2025. So this course is only a year old. We still have 2.5 years left before this series retires. So there's nothing to update right now. We are at the latest version. And of course, every single course on my website is always up to date to the latest set of exam objectives. No reason for that. I do give you a way in the very first video of the course for you to determine if the course is the most recent one. So I try to give you some prompts for that. Network Plus is the N10009. That was released in June of 2024. That's not going to retire until the end of next year, 2027, December of 2027. So you have practically 2 years left on Network Plus as well. So there's nothing to update. CompTIA is not changing Network Plus. There have been no updates to Network Plus. There have been no notifications. They are going to change anything about Network Plus, and I suspect that Network Plus will not change until its retirement in December of 2027. So another one of those things to think about. And Security Plus, probably the one that is the most, the one that's been around for the longest amount of time so far. The current version, the 701 version, SY0701, was released on November 7th of 2023, which means it will still be around at this time next year. May of 2027 is the retirement date for that we estimate for Security Plus. So no big changes happening anytime soon with any of those top 3 certifications. You don't have to worry about a thing. You are studying, if you're here in March of 2026, you are studying the right versions. If you are studying the 220, 1201, 1202, if you're studying the N10009 for Network Plus, or if you're studying the SY0701 for Security Plus, this is one of those unusual times where nothing's changing. We don't have to worry about it. If all of your study materials are marked as that, you're studying the right study materials. You are just fine to be able to do that. That's a great question to ask. Thank you for submitting that to our list. I like some of these. Let's have a look at, this is actually a pretty good one. This comes up quite a bit. This is from Russell, who asks, I have 6 months to renew my A+ certification. What is the most cost-effective method to renew the certification in that time? I've looked into Certmaster, and it seems prohibitively expensive, which we'll kind of drill down on this because Certmaster is a brand name. It's not a product name. So we will try to break apart what that means here as we are answering this question. So renewing your certification, this is a good place to be in. Russell, you have been certified for 2.5 years so far with your A+. Congratulations. And like many people, you'd like to keep the certification, but you don't want to have to retake both exams again. That's expensive. Your question specifically is talking about the most cost-effective method, and having to take both the Core 1 and the Core 2 exams again would renew your certification. That's super expensive. Relatively speaking, that's more expensive than other renewal types. So not the best way to renew. There's a lot of different ways to renew your certification. If you look at the YouTube video description of this video, in there is a link down at the bottom of how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus certification in just a few hours. And in that video, I do talk about the way to do that, which, spoiler alert, is Certmaster CE. But I also talk about other ways to renew your certification, some of which are relatively cost-effective. Others that you might use are not really very cost-effective at all, but they do provide you with some options, because you could take a higher level CompTIA certification. Let's say that you are already studying for your Network Plus. Well, if you pass your Network Plus sometime in the next 6 months, which is before your expiration date of your current exam, Network Plus fully renews the A+ certification. Well, how do I know that? Well, that's a fine question as well. Let's go out to the CompTIA website, and out there is the CompTIA.org. And if you go under resources, and we click that resources option to view all resources, one of the options under here, along with blog and research and case studies and scheduling exam and all these things, are continuing education. I'm going to click continuing education. Are the different ways that you can apply and use continuing education units or renewal process within your certification. So they give you different options. Choose your renewal path. You could renew with a single activity like Certmaster CE. You could renew with multiple activities like collecting CEUs. We talked a little bit about that today. And there are other options available like taking a higher level certification or taking a third-party certification, which may or may not give you all of the continuing education units you need to renew. You'll need to look into the specifics of that. I think the version that I find most popular, the one that they find that people are using, is Certmaster CE. And you mentioned in your message, let's go back to that I've looked into Certmaster and it seems expensive. Well, I guess it depends on what you look at when you deal with that. Let's talk about renewing with multiple activities first. Collecting CEUs. That is a very common way to go about renewing, but it doesn't necessarily provide you with an easy way to renew. Collecting CEUs involves a lot of different processes. It can take quite a bit of time to do this, but you have 6 months. And if you wanted to renew, this is one of the least expensive ways to do it, is collecting CEUs. You have to collect those CEUs, and then you have to pay an annual maintenance fee to be able to submit those and renew your certification. The cost of that annual maintenance fee will depend on the certification that you're taking. The CEUs that you need for A+ are 20 CEUs, and they can be used across many. You could take different exams. There's a big list of exams here, the number of CEUs they provide. Notice some certification exams do not give you all the CEUs you need. You need 20. A lot of these don't give you 20. So a lot of these may not work for you. All right, what about collecting it in other ways? What if we were going to go through the process of collecting CEUs for multiple activities? You watch a webinar like this one, you do some blog posts. There are a lot of different ways to do it. Industry participation, teach or mentor, create instructional materials, participate as a subject matter. And it tells you for A+, if you teach or mentor, you can earn 10 CEUs. And they tell you within this page how to do that. That is a very relatively easy way to do it. And if you submit CEUs, let's see if they have the pricing on here. The pricing for all of these. I don't think I see the 3-year renewal. Submit. I don't have the numbers immediately available on here, but it tends to be the least expensive of all of these. The one that is probably the most popular, however, is renewing with a single activity using Certmaster CE. This is probably the most popular version of this. It is only slightly more expensive than collecting CEUs. So when you said it was just really, really expensive to use Certmaster, I suspect you might have been looking at Certmaster training materials like Certmaster Learn or Certmaster Practice or Certmaster Labs. Those are training materials that don't help you renew anything. They're not going to help you with a renewal. So don't buy Certmaster Learn, which is, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to purchase. That's used when you're going through the exam the very first time. For renewing, you would use Certmaster CE. And Certmaster CE, much less expensive to do this. In fact, if I went out to the CompTIA store and I look at Certmaster CE for A+, I'm going to try to find this on the store behind the scenes. I know you don't see it on your screen quite yet. I want to make sure I get the right thing up and on my screen so we can see it. Certmaster CE is listed on the CompTIA website, and this is the US dollars for Certmaster CE. The cost is $139. So not much more than 3 years of maintenance. And if you take and pass Certmaster CE, which is a web-based, computer-based training program, they ask you some quiz questions in there. You have to get every single question right. If you don't, you have to take the questions again. There's no penalty. You just take them till you get them all right. And you submit that. You don't have to pay an annual fee for renewal. You only have to pay $139. You take Certmaster CE, which you could do in a day, and you're renewed. This is the fastest and probably this probably is the most cost-effective way to renew, because you're not wasting or spending. It's not really a waste, but you're not spending a lot of time collecting CEUs from other places. You're spending a day, probably less than a day, or spend time over multiple days going through this computer-based training. And when you're done, you're renewed. That's it. All done. All finished. So that, I would say that probably is why it is the most popular way to renew, is using that, because it has such a relatively easy cost, a relatively easy way to get into and use Certmaster CE. It's relatively straightforward to use because it's computer-based training. You can do it from anywhere as long as you have an internet connection. And once you're done, you're done. Nothing more to pay, nothing more to do. It just renews it and you're finished. So another way to think about renewals and how well you can make that renewal happen, that might be something useful for you to consider. And I think if you're looking at Certmaster CE, I find it a very cost-effective way and probably the most popular way that people are using to renew their certifications. Let's do more questions, shall we? I'm going to start going through the questions that you have on this list. Let's see what other things that we have in this view that you have provided. And again, I'm taking questions on anything. It can be about certifications. It can be about the IT, the world of IT in general. My experience and my background is in large-scale network design and large-scale cybersecurity implementations, especially those revolving around a next-generation firewall implementation in very large, very high-speed, and most often redundant environments. So let's talk about moving from one part to another within IT. I'm going to take this question from Sanjo, who says, I'm 25, currently pursuing a career change from graphic design to IT with the goal of being a network engineer. I love this, by the way, because my background is heavily in the world of network engineering. Sanjo continues, I'm wondering, what methods do you recommend to someone new who wants to get into a help desk role, wants to stand out against other applicants despite only having certifications and no tech degree? How soon do I need to go get another degree when starting out in IT if needed? Thank you. Well, first, it's somehow, some IT degrees in general are actually quite hard to find. four-year universities don't tend to have information technology degrees. Very few of them do. And the ones that do tend to leverage them more as a hybrid computer science degree that throws in a little bit of IT, and they call that their IT degree. That's what they do. The perspective of traditional four-year universities has been that information technology is more of training. That is a thing that you can be trained on. We are a place of learning. And so you need to learn when you come here. Therefore, we're not putting ourselves as low as this horrible IT thing. We are teaching you the skills that you need broadly that you could use across your entire career for the rest of your career, which, by the way, is not true at all. In fact, if you do get a job in IT, you'll find that you're probably more successful, making more money, at least financially, than the other learning things these four-year degrees are giving you, ironically. That's how it turns out. But there are a number of organizations that can help you with getting trained in some of these IT fields and the things that you would need to work through. I will tell you, I do not have a degree in IT. My degree is a four-year degree in business management. No technical aspect of that at all. Not management information systems, not management and IT, just management. Of course, back in my day, there were computers. Stop that. Yes, there were. But there was, even today, I find that the implementation, the idea of teaching information technology in those four-year universities has not really moved very much. That dial has not really been pushed often. It's kind of hard to find that. And so I tell people, don't worry so much about trying to get a formal degree in IT, although it might help you to have an AA degree and other things, get some industry certifications, but formal degrees are still important. And this is where a lot of people, I think, get tripped up. They think that in some way an IT certification can replace or somehow negate the need for a formal education. And it doesn't. You still need a formal degree because employers are still asking for these formal degrees. And indeed, having a four-year degree from university does teach you things that are broadly applying outside the scope of IT, but can make you a better person and a better learner overall for the rest of your career. So we can't completely discount universities. I also see a lot of people, by the way, saying, I want to get into IT, so I'm going to go get a computer science degree. Yeah, but that's computer science. Computer science is not IT. Computer science is more of application development, hardware development, firmware creation. It's more of the coding side of things and the hardware development side of things. And computer science doesn't teach you anything about operating systems. It really doesn't teach you much about networking. Certainly doesn't teach you a lot about security, at least not from the world of maintaining and applying security, networking, and operating system skills and keeping the systems up and running. So those two things don't really overlap very much. The only thing is that some employers don't know that. So computer science, you can walk in with a computer science degree. Some employers think that you would be good at IT, when in fact you have no knowledge of IT with a computer science degree. So there is again a balancing act there that you have to think about, things that will really help, especially in a degree type field. The things that I would recommend you do is get a four-year degree in something that is more than just a liberal arts type degree. Not to dismiss liberal arts. I come from a household with liberal arts was a huge part of it. So having a English literature degree is a great degree to have, but not in the world of IT. We tend to focus more on something more analytical, a degree in business, a degree in economics, a degree in chemistry, a degree in engineering, and even a degree in computer science. Those are the types of degrees that would at least be adjacent to the world of IT. If you can find somewhere that actually has an IT program, and it really is an IT program, it focuses on operating systems and networking and security and the cloud, and these days perhaps even AI. I have no idea what they teach you. They'll teach you something ridiculous, and you'll be able to apply that in the world of AI. So maybe it is working. The AI, cloud, security, networking, that whole operating system world of things is IT. And if you are in a four-year degree that says IT, but they are teaching you programming classes, then you really don't have an IT degree. That's a more of a hybrid. So, but there are some organizations that really do have good IT programs. I have seen them. They are few and far between. They're a little bit of a unicorn, but we're starting to see a little more movement in the world of formal education to get degrees that are a little more focused because there's not enough good IT people in the world. We're starting to see this already. And in fact, the gap is now growing. Now that we're starting to implement AI and people are becoming less knowledgeable on how to speak and write and how to do the most basics of computing tasks, your job will be even more important. So this is one of those things that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about, is that we still need smart people who know how to do things, because as hard as we try, we can't automate certain tasks. And that's where you will come into this whole mix, is making a job, a career, and being able to do that for years and years and years to come. So I wouldn't say drop what you're doing and go get an IT degree. Not incredibly important, as long as you have some type of formal education that you can rely on. I will also reference you to a video that's part of this YouTube video description on how to get a job in IT with no experience. And it's a 30-minute video. I know, it's 30 minutes. And for me, that's a lot of content. I really don't mess around in my videos very much, pun intended. I really go through the entire video and give you information after information after information after information. I don't spend a lot of time cracking jokes and spending a lot of time talking down a side of a topic. We really focus on the things you need to know. And I say there are 4 different elements that are very important to bring to the table when you're trying to get a job in IT. Those 4 elements are a formal education. I probably talked too much today about what that entails. You do need industry certifications. Even still, even if you have a 4-year degree, you still need industry certifications to show that you can apply some of those skills into more practical terms, even if you've never had a job in IT before. The third one is you have some type of practical experience. Now, this could be that you have an internship that you went to. There's not a lot of those, however, at least not in IT. One of the things that people will do is do volunteer type jobs, or they will maintain systems at a friend's business or at their church or for their organization. Maybe you maintain the website for your community association. You know, those are practical IT skills that you could put on a resume and say, yes, this is something I know how to do. And of course, you could probably set up your own labs at home. You have a home lab, right? If you don't have a home lab, how are you supposed to prove to anybody that you know how to do any of these things? Have you set up your own Active Directory infrastructure at home? Why not? Have you set up your own firewall configuration at home and set up your own rules and set up your own IPS inside of that firewall? There's free options available. You can do that today. You should do that. And I talk in this video about why that's important and things you can do to help add to the list of practical experience that you might have. The fourth element, the last element, and perhaps the one that is most frequently overlooked, is you know somebody who already works there. What? Isn't that wrong? Is that in some way unethical? It is not. We like hiring people we know. We don't like hiring strangers off the street. We have to really ask a lot of questions about their work ethic and do they know the content? Are they just writing stuff down on a resume? We have to test them to see if they really do know the technical topics. It's a much harder interview process when we don't know someone. But if you've met somebody at a Microsoft user group meeting, you met somebody at a local regional IT trade show, you met somebody at a Palo Alto Networks user group meeting, you met somebody at a Cisco user group meeting, you see where I'm going with this. These user group meetings are in your area, and you can attend those meetings in person and meet the people who are also there. That's the whole point of this, is human networking, not the bits and bytes networking, not the protocols. You are talking to other humans, as crazy as that sounds. One of the benefits about these user group meetings is they usually have an interesting set of topics they'll cover, so you'll probably learn something. And there's also opportunities set aside to mingle. There's usually pizza or some other food. There's drinks. You have a Coca-Cola, talk to somebody and say, oh, well, why are you here? What are you doing? What brings you to this user group meeting? Very often, if you go to a Microsoft user group meeting, a Cisco user group meeting, a Palo Alto Networks user group meeting, these are the people who are already working at these companies. They're trying to keep up with the latest technologies themselves. This is where you should be meeting people. And I'll also tell you, be prepared if you do meet people from these places and you tell them, I'm just starting out in the industry and I'm really looking for my very first entry-level IT position. They may ask you immediately for your resume. And that's because most of these large organizations have some type of finder's fee or some type of employee referral program that if an employee brings them a resume to the HR department, that person gets hired, not only does that person get a job, but the person who recommended them gets a bonus. They get a little bit of money sent over to them. So often I will find people that are more than happy to take your resume and send it on to the HR department. And you now can connect to somebody on LinkedIn. You now know somebody who works there. You can ping them every once in a while saying, well, that job didn't work out. If anything else comes up, let me know. And what would you recommend I study to be prepared for the next job or for this job? So that you know you can get some practical feedback on things you might want to work on if you want to work in that company. Getting that first job in IT is always the hardest part. Getting your first job in any industry is always the hardest part. Once you get that first job, it is so much easier to move up or to move around within the IT department. So you really do have to work really hard to get that first position in IT. But once you get it, you're in really good shape. I don't think you need to go back to school for this, however. I worked with a lot of people in my industry. I've already mentioned I don't have an IT degree. I don't have a technical degree. I have worked with a lot of people that had engineering degrees. That's a hard degree. And I know that because I started off as an engineering major. Did it work out? It did not. So I'm not good enough for an engineering degree. But I did work hard enough to get into IT, which ironically calls the technicians within IT systems engineers. I don't know. The engineering people are kind of mad about that too. You do see that hop from time to time. But as soon as the engineering people, electrical engineers, civil engineers are upset that computer people are called systems engineers, and then when they start complaining about it, the train drivers show up. Like, none of y'all are engineers. We are the engineers. So I think they're probably right. I think maybe we should just call the train guys, you guys are the real engineers. Everybody else, we're just trying to figure it out at this point. In any case, don't worry so much about your formal degree. Worry about what you know, worry about who you know and who you've met, and apply some of those practical things that you can do in your home lab and with other places into your resume. This will give you plenty of stories to tell when you walk into an interview. And they say, tell us about a problem you solved, you ran into and you solved. Oh, let me tell you about setting up Active Directory and the stumbling blocks I ran into with that. And you can tell them that story. Let me tell you about setting up my firewall and the things I messed up and how I was able to fix it. And let me show you some reports I created from my firewall. Look at these. You know, those are great things to bring into an interview along with your resume. So another great set of ideas. You don't have to go get another degree, but it would be helpful to get those different elements added to the entire list of things that you can bring into a job posting and perhaps even nail that job. Get that position, get your foot in the door. It can be really, really useful. Let's do some more questions. I have not been looking at my time here. I've been talking quite a bit for these questions. So I both apologize and I don't apologize for that. So I think sometimes it's useful to go through the details of those. Let's keep going through this list of different things. I will tell you, thank you, by the way, Anonymous. I mentioned earlier how important it is to get the real tough questions in. Anonymous asks, all right, what did you have for breakfast? There you go. That's it. I don't think anybody really cares about that one at all. Did I have breakfast today? I did. It was good. It was all right. Let's keep going through our list of things that you have submitted. This is one that comes up quite a bit. And I think probably because there are some badly written practice questions out there regarding this. And I'm going to mention this specifically and broadly, which makes no sense as I talk about it there, but we'll talk about this one. It's from Nick. Nick says, hey, which RAID type has the fastest performance? I don't know why I did that, Nick. Which RAID type has the fastest performance? One of the things that you often find in badly written practice exams, and I've read quite a few, is that they sometimes will try to have you say what the best thing is, or what the fastest thing is, or what the most redundant thing is. Sometimes there's a good answer. I mean, if you have a list of 5 different technologies that are networking technologies, pick the fastest one of these. Okay, that's a good question. But that's a very practical question that has a very specific answer that is documented in standards as to what the answer would be. There's a very obvious and very technical answer for that one. But when you get into questions like this, RAID types and which are fastest? Well, do you mean RAID types that are hardware-based or software-based? Do you mean software-based RAID types that are running on a slower processor or a faster processor? Do you mean RAID types that are encrypting or not encrypting? Do you mean drives that are hard 5400 RPM drives, 7200 RPM drives, or SSD? So this is a question that cannot be answered because there's not enough information here to understand what you're trying to say. And even then, what's happening under the hood of RAID is not one where we can definitively point to a specific RAID type and say, this one's the fastest always. Generally speaking, RAID 0 has always been considered the fastest because it's not having to write another copy in mirroring. It's not having to stripe things across multiple storage drives. It's not having to calculate any type of parity. So you would think functionally that RAID 0 would be the fastest. And maybe 10, 15 years ago, maybe I would go with you on that. But now we have incredibly fast CPUs that can calculate parities instantly at speeds much faster than your storage drives would ever go, certainly hard drives. We have SSDs that are now so fast, we don't have to wait for a platter to spin around. We don't have to wait for an arm to go back and forth on the drive. We don't have to wait for all the pieces of the file to be collected before we can do anything with them. So that's not a concern anymore. And these days, practically all of the different RAID types have a relative similar performance across all of them because our underlying hardware has gotten so much better. So if you ever get a question like this that says, here's a hardware thing, which one's fastest? Well, let's have the argument. That's like putting gamers in a room and saying, which is better, AMD or Intel? And it just becomes a bloodbath. They just start fighting it out. It's a war. It's a gang war. And they start arguing about it. And if you look at the math, they're about the same. But don't tell them that. No, that could be trouble. Don't get into that fight. It's the same fight we, as technicians, we always like to have. Is Mac OS better? Is Linux better? Is Windows better? Let's fight about it. And it is fun and interesting to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of those different platforms, but there are advantages and disadvantages to all of them. So there is no one obvious answer to those, just as there's no one obvious answer to which one's fastest, which one's the best, which one's the highest, which one's the lowest. Sometimes there's not a good answer. So you really do have to make sure that the practice questions that you are using are built in a way that is either giving you the context for that determination, or perhaps it's maybe even spelling it out for you. Otherwise, you can throw out that question completely. I don't think that's really going to help you much at all. Let's keep going through this list of questions you have. Others that are here. There are a lot of questions I got. I won't put up any single question on the screen, but I've gotten a lot of questions that have come through about working through and preparing for the exam. What do you really need to prepare for the exam? So I mentioned this earlier, but let's go through the 4 different things I would really love for you to be able to have available for your exam. On our website, we refer to this as the WRAP method, W-R-A-P method. We want to watch some good training videos. Sometimes watching someone perform a trace route, watching someone change configurations in Active Directory, and watching someone demonstrate that can be very useful. So watching, that's your W in WRAP, can be very good. It can be my course. It could be another high quality training course, but sometimes having video can really help you. The R in WRAP is to read a good book. Having a book is able to condense a large amount of information into a very small space and get it across to you in a very short period of time. Video involves you watching people. People say all the time, well, I watch your videos, but I turn them up to 1.5 times speed or 2 times speed, because the media of video gets information across in an important way, but it is a slower form of information exchange than a book is. But then again, a book doesn't demonstrate for you. So again, advantages and disadvantages, you should be using both. So there's your W, there's your R. A is you're applying what you have learned in the form of hands-on labs. And I think labs are incredibly important. There's something about typing on a keyboard and seeing the result on the screen that for me really solidifies it. It flips that bit in my brain. It causes that synapse to fire. Something happens that locks it in so that when I run a ping command and I see the results of the ping coming up, and then I run another ping command to something that's not up on the network and I get a different set of results, now I really do understand what that tool is doing for me. So having that hands-on can really be helpful. Some people get it when they watch the video. They don't have to do the hands-on. They are seeing me do the hands-on, and that's the hands-on piece that they get. And that's fine too. If you can extrapolate that into that synapse firing, that's good. But I think sometimes physically doing it, the same way, if you play a musical instrument, you probably understand this. If you play piano, you know, when you're first learning a song on the piano, you're watching the sheet music and you're figuring it out. But after you practice a few times, you'll notice that your fingers just tend to go where they're supposed to go. You have this muscle memory of the music, and you're not even thinking about what the sheet music looked like anymore. It just becomes part of your memorization of the song. So it's a similar thing with your memorization of these commands. I think there is a tactile link that really sticks it into your brain. So that is your A, is applying this through the use of labs. And the P is for practice questions specifically. So those are the 4 elements I think are perfect for studying for your exam. You can, of course, use any videos you would like. You can use any book you would like. You can use any set of labs you would like, and you can use any set of practice questions you would like. But I think having all 4 of them best prepares you for passing one of these exams. Can you get away with not using one of them? Sure. Or even more than one of them. Some people only watch my videos and go and take their course and go and take their exam to complete their certification. That's not necessarily what I recommend, but that's what worked for them. Everybody has a different study process. Everybody has a different strategy for learning content. I take a lot of time to learn my content. I take 6 months on an exam like this. An exam that would take some people 3 months, it takes me 6 months. Maybe it's the amount of time I have to study during the day. Maybe I like to really learn it a little bit better so that I can apply some of these things a little bit better. I don't like to skip out on those. But sometimes you're under the gun. You need to get it done in a very short period of time, so you use the tools that are going to get you that information as quickly as possible. I don't think any one study method is the best. I think the best study method is the one that works best for you. I've seen a lot of people come through and watch these videos. I think I calculated it the other day. I looked at our stats, and about 250 million videos have been viewed on our YouTube channel. That's a lot of people that have gone through and watched videos, but not all of them are just watching videos. And I think people have their expectation of what they need to go through to really learn this content, it doesn't fit with what it really takes to learn this content. That's why I always mention that in the very first video of every course. I tell you effectively about this RAP method and say, you need all of these things to have the best possible chance. You might be able to get rid of 1 or 2 or 3 of them, but make sure that you are doing as much as you need for you and you're doing the right things to be able to pass those exams. Let's do some more questions. I know I'm at the top of the hour, but I think we can fit in a couple of others in this list. Let's keep going through these different pieces. There was a question about the exam itself. And this is where I think a lot of people do have an interest because it's not inexpensive to take the A+ exam. What is the most cost-effective way to buy the A+ exam? And I'm assuming in this case you mean to buy the registration process to take the exam. So it might be useful to look at that. So I think I need to go back to the CompTIA website. So I did close that out. I'm going to go to the store. The numbers we're going to look at are for the store that is listed at the top as USA. This covers the United States, Canada, and U.S. territories. So if you're in the Mariana Islands, if you're on Guam, if you're in Puerto Rico, if you're in any of those U.S. territories, then this particular geography applies to you. Or if you're in the U.S. or if you're in Canada, this geography applies to you. But if you're in a different country, you can choose that different country on this page, and it will show you the pricing for you in that particular geography. But in this case, we're basically dealing with North America effectively and those other territories outside of this. I'm going to go to the A+ section. I know there is a section here for A+. All of the pricing, I'm not logged in here. So this is for anybody who can go to the CompTIA store and the pricing that is available on their site. An A+ voucher today, $265. Do I have the right voucher numbers on? I'm wondering if I'm the right place for this. I think so, because if I look at, in fact, if I go to look at the security side, yeah, that particular exam, yeah, I definitely have the right numbers, because on Security Plus, $425 to take that exam. So yeah, these numbers are working out to be exactly what you would expect for the A+. So this just happens to be what the cost is. If you were to go to the CompTIA website and you need to take the A+ exam, $265. So there's a lot to work through there for this exam. And that's a single voucher for a single exam. One A+ voucher is good for one exam. If you need to take the Core 1 exam and the Core 2 exam, which you do if you want to get certified, you need 2 of these. So now that's over $500 that you have to spend just to take the exam if you purchase those vouchers directly on the CompTIA website. Now, if you come to the Professor Messer website, I've mentioned earlier, we have discounted vouchers. These are the same vouchers as what you see on that screen, but there are different costs. So you may find that different CompTIA partners have different pricing. So on our site, you don't pay $265 a voucher, you pay $239 a voucher. And just as the CompTIA website has that $49 retake assurance option, those retake assurance vouchers are also on my site as well for $49. So nothing lost there. You've got a discount already built in if you go to a CompTIA partner. Usually they're about a 10% discount. And that's about what you see here. So you're saving $26 each exam. That's a $50 savings for both of those exams together. If you are a student, you get even better pricing. You have to register yourself on the CompTIA website as a student. This would be a student in North America at a college. And if you are able to register yourself as currently attending college, they have a process that looks this up with the universities, and they will verify if you have a class or not. So you can't fool them. You can't say, yeah, I'm in classes right now. No, they're going to check, and they'll be able to determine this. But if you are a student, your discount is around 50%, 50%. You pay half price. So I think that's a great thing to look into if you are at a school, a university. Make sure you look at the different options on the CompTIA website. This would be your student discount. All you have to do is search the Google machine for a CompTIA student discount, get rid of all the AI junk that tells you wrong, and go directly to the first link on the CompTIA website. And it says, do you offer discounts for students? How can I get one? And they tell you. The process they use to check to see if you're in classes is called Sheer ID. So you'll see that listed there. And they tell you the process to get that heavy discount if you happen to be a student, which is a great benefit. If you're in college anyway, you don't have any money. You don't have $500 to shell out for an A+ certification, but you might be able to budget enough. You spend one weekend not partying, maybe you'll get enough money to take one exam. So there is some benefit there, and ways that you could get the exams much cheaper. Those tend to be the three different categories for pricing, which is this. Keep in mind that this has nothing to do with having a particular email address. Even if you went to college and you still have your EDU email from college, that is not going to help you here. They check to see if you're taking classes. If you're not in class, you don't get the discount, just so you're aware of that. This is also on the CompTIA website, a great place to go. But those are the three different categories. You either pay full price at CompTIA, you pay about a 10% discount at a CompTIA partner, including ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers, or if you're a student, get a nice discount. And that is on the CompTIA website, and they give you a separate process to go through for the purchase and registration so that you are able to earn that certification discount. Those tend to be the three top ones. So if you fit into one of those categories, maybe that's something that will work for you. And you can figure out what makes the most sense for the things that you are doing. As far as I know, there's no minimum registration you have to have in your courses, like a certain number of hours per semester. As far as I know, you just have to be an active student. So I don't know what that means. I'm not in charge of that part. I don't manage the process. I don't work at CompTIA. I don't know. They handle that whole thing. Not my craziness. They have enough to deal with, and I don't want to get in their way with working through those things. So that's what I would do. Look at one of those three categories, one of those three options, find the one that works for you. I think that would be the best way to go about doing this. Let's keep going. I know we're at the top of the hour. I want to be able to fit maybe one or two more of these in here, depending on how much I talk, of course. I'm going to take a sip real quick so we can do that. So I talked earlier about having some practical experience, and that practical experience is going to help you when you walk into the door of these exams to be able to work through the challenges you have with getting a job in the industry. One of the questions we got here is about how does that help you? How does setting up a home lab help you in an interview? How can you really leverage that? And this is the part that I think a lot of people don't consider when they are walking into an interview, is that you're expecting the person running the interview to be in charge of the conversation. No. You should be in charge of the conversation. You're the one that should set the tone for the entire interview. The person who's asking the questions from the company, the person interviewing you, the interviewer should be talking very little. They should be asking one question and then they're stepping back, and you should be talking for 5 or 10 minutes every time they ask you a question. They want to hear you talk. They want to hear you go through a process. They want to hear you tell the story. They want to see just how much you know. And the more you talk and the more you have really worked on your stories, the more powerful your knowledge will be, the more information you'll be able to get back to them showing you really know what you're talking about. So let me give you an example. This was the question that was asked that was submitted. Let me give you an example of how you could use this home lab to really help people understand what you know about a topic. So let's say that you set up a home lab, and let's say, since we're talking A+, you set up Active Directory in your home lab. This is something you can easily do, by the way. It's really hard to do the first time. It's really easy to do the second time. Let me explain. For those that don't know, Windows Server is available as an evaluation on the Microsoft website. You can download it and install it today. All you have to look for is Microsoft Windows Server Evaluation. I know you aren't seeing this on your side. And it will bring you a link to the Microsoft Evaluation Center. Of course, there's a web page on Microsoft for the Evaluation Center. And look, right here at the front, Windows Server 2025, evaluate now. In fact, they even have a Windows 11 Enterprise I can evaluate now. You could effectively download Windows 11 and Windows Server, set up two different VMs. One is a workstation on your network. One is the server, an Active Directory server on your network. At the bare minimum, there's your lab. No extra hardware isn't really required unless maybe you don't have enough memory in your current computer. Maybe it can't run two VMs at the same time. Maybe you don't have enough drive space. There's a few things like that there. But I would recommend installing both of those, because what you're going to do is set up Windows Server to be your Active Directory server. You're going to maybe load it with some names. If you look at my videos in my A+ course, I did exactly this. This is how I set up Windows Server that you end up seeing in the videos, and how I started using it and configuring it. Maybe set up a set of users on there. Maybe they're people you know in your real life. Maybe they're people that are your favorite sci-fi program. Maybe there are a list of Greek gods. Maybe it is musical people. Maybe it's your favorite musicians. You set up your own Active Directory infrastructure, and you put all those names in there. You build it out. You maybe even put different departments, different OUs, organizational units. So now we're chatting Active Directory nomenclature. We're setting up some OUs. We're assigning different logins. We're setting different group policies. I show you how to do this in my videos, so you can easily do this once you get it running. The challenge, of course, is getting it running, because there are some very specific requirements for getting Windows Server running with Active Directory in a way that would allow me to build out a virtual machine for Windows 11 and have them all talk together. I don't want to spoil what those requirements are, because you need to go through this process and you need to fail miserably. That's encouraging, isn't it? That's what you want to hear. You need to try this so that you can burn up in flames. That's what I want you to do. I want you to fail at doing this, because when you fail is when you learn. And when you fail is when you get some great stories. You know, nobody talks about, when we sit around a bunch of engineers, this will happen inevitably when you get into this career, is you go to a training class somewhere at night, you sit around by the bar, everybody talks about this war story or that war story about what they were implementing and the database problem and the upgrade issue you ran into and the network problem that you found. But you're never talking about the things that worked. I installed the Windows update the other day, worked perfect. End of story. Nobody wants that. That doesn't help anyone. What you want to hear about is that really difficult problem that someone caused, or maybe even that you caused, and the mire of nonsense you got into to try to resolve it, the problems you found, and ultimately how you resolved the issue. There's a story there. It's almost like an arc. There's an introduction, you have the middle of the story, and then finally you have the end. This is what you are doing when you're installing Windows Server. I want you to go out to the Microsoft website. I want you to sign in and get that evaluation downloaded. I want you to try installing it, and you're going to run into a problem. Maybe you run into a problem right away. Maybe you downloaded one flavor of Windows Server, and it's not a flavor that runs properly on your system. Or maybe you've installed it, but for some reason you can't get the Windows 11 virtual machine to communicate to the Windows Server virtual machine. You know, all of these, and I think all of these evaluations are 90-day evaluations, so you got plenty of time to work on trying to get these things to work together. One of the things that you will find is that you will run into the problem, you'll get an error message. What do we do? What every good technician does. You go to Google and you type in the error message. You then, like every good technician does, you get rid of the AI explanation and you go straight to the articles that really describe the problem that you're having and the solution for that problem. And it will step you through and you'll get an understanding. Oh, that's what happened. Let me try that configuration. Okay, that worked. Now, the important part is when you go through that process, tomorrow you're going to forget what just happened there. You're going to forget the error message. You're going to forget about what you did to get the error message. You're going to even forget about what you did to fix the error message. You don't want to forget this. This is your story. This is the explanation that you're going to give when somebody inevitably asks that interview question. Tell us about an instance where you had a problem and you were able to solve it. What was that and what did you do? Well, that's the story. They're really looking for they really don't even care what the issue is necessarily. They want to see about the process you went through. What was the thought process? What did you have to configure? Was there a configuration file? Did you need to reinstall? Was there a patch you needed to apply? Did you need to reach out to the manufacturer? Well, you're able to find this on a forum. Did you find it in Google? Those are important things to talk about. You need to talk about the process. During the process of talking about the process, you're also talking about what you know. So you don't have to use a hammer and tell them, I'm certified. I don't need to explain this. No. You need to go through the entire thing, because in the process of explaining this, they're going to see that, okay, that certification he got, that's legit because he was able to go through this process, troubleshoot this issue, and resolve it. And it may be that your first story is about installing Windows Server and how your Windows 11 enterprise device would not talk to it. And you could not figure out why. And then you found the answer and it was painfully obvious. And of course, that's what it was. And now you were able to get them talking. And now I said, once I got them talking, that was the easy fix. Then I started using group policy and I started setting up some cybersecurity policies and tightening down the end user workstation and trying to see what would work and what didn't. And I tried to install some software and group policy blocked it. Now, those are the stories you need. So document everything you do. It doesn't have to be Windows Server. I'm just giving you an example of a lab that might be good. Maybe you download a firewall and you install firewall software. Maybe it's an open source firewall or a free software for a firewall that's available. There's many options out there. You install it, you plug it into your existing internet connection, and great stories can come from this. First, the challenge of setting up a firewall is many and varied. And I'm speaking to you specifically as an ex-firewall systems engineer. There's lots of ways this can go wrong. Great, because that's a great way to learn. Document every single one of those bad things that happened. But perhaps even more importantly, once you get the firewall running, you're not done. For example, wouldn't this be great during an interview when somebody says, tell us about a time you ran into a problem? Well, I set up a firewall. I ran this firewall on my network. I set it up because I wanted to see how many people were trying to break into my home network, but are getting stopped at the firewall. So I set up a rule, of course, that blocked all incoming traffic. By default, that's how my firewall's set up. But I turned on reporting for that. That doesn't always happen when you have a firewall where the default is to block all incoming traffic. And that type of standard blocking process normally doesn't log anything. But what if you did log it? How many hits against your network would you see if you simply plugged in a firewall and logged every single attack type that came in and was blocked by your firewall? How many would that be? And that's really the question you could bring up during the interview. In the first hour, how many attacks did you think I saw against my network? Closest to the pin. Anyone? 300? 700? I saw 2,000, or whatever the number is. And here's the report. And it's printed out, so you don't have to stumble around with the monitor and the tablet. No, here's the printout. It's a piece of paper. If I hand them the report and go, here's the report I created during that first hour, you can see these were the attacks, and here were the attack types. Once I saw the attack types, I wanted to know, where did those attack types come from? What were they attacking? And I found the CVEs for every single one of these. And then I had an understanding, oh, this was a Microsoft SQL Server attack. This was an attack using a vulnerability that was reported last month from Microsoft. This was an attack where someone was trying to get to a web server and trying to circumvent the security of the web server. So you've already parsed out everything in that document. And you've now spent 15 minutes, 20 minutes talking about this. The bulk of your interview, they've said nothing. You've talked the entire time about this story. And I would really recommend when you walk into an interview like this, you have 2 or 3 stories like that. You can just pull out, well, let me tell you about this time when I did this thing. Those are game changers when it comes to positioning yourself in an entry-level IT position, so that people understand, oh, not only do you say you know about Active Directory, you really do know about Active Directory, and you're very familiar with setting up and managing Active Directory rules, policies, resetting passwords, changing configurations, managing these remote desktop systems, and being able to troubleshoot these Windows environments. That's what we're talking about. Have you ever been paid to do that for a company? You have not. Do you have exactly the same skills that they are using today in this company to perform those tasks? Yes, you do. And that's one of the great things about these technologies that we use. If you look at the biggest companies in the world, they're using exactly the same Windows server that you downloaded from the Microsoft website. They're exactly the same. You're learning and working with exactly the same software. You just need to make sure that they know that, because very often people don't go that extra mile. They don't set up the VMs. They don't build out their home labs. That is a huge advantage. And at the same time, if you already know someone in the organization that you met at a Microsoft user group meeting, and then you walk in for a help desk position that's primarily Microsoft based, and you talk about all the work you've already done with Microsoft operating systems, that's a winner in my book. That certainly positions you higher in the list than other people who haven't done that work. Is it a lot of extra work? It is. But these are skills and these are types of knowledge that you will use throughout your career. Let me really explain to you what I mean by that. More than 15 years ago, I got my Microsoft MCSE certification. Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, it was called. And it was really based on knowledge of Windows Server. You had to take 6 different certification exams. Once you passed all 6 of them, you were an MCSE. You were Microsoft certified. And that was a very prestigious title to have at the time, although I was not in the world of server administration at the time. I was getting it because I worked for an organization who provided support for those types of infrastructures. And I did a lot with Microsoft indeed. At the time, it was, I think, Windows NT. Now, this is an ancient, it's very dusty. I doubt you even can remember back in the world of Windows NT. But Windows NT had Windows Server. There was Active Directory. There was group policy. You're working and modifying, changing the way group policy was working. In fact, effectively, the setup of Windows Server or the setup of Windows NT and getting Active Directory running, very similar to setting up Windows Server 2025 and getting Active Directory running. The skills that I learned back then are almost identical to the skills I would be learning today. So there's your benefit. You're not wasting time setting up these home labs. You're not wasting time learning this content that's in A+. I think people a lot of times get this idea that they're having to learn about the boot process and post. You have to learn about RAID types, and you have to learn about all these, why do I have to learn about all these things? Just rote memorization. When am I ever going to use this? And they walk into their first day of work and realize, I'm going to use all of this. All of the things on the A+ exam are modern things that we use in most common data centers and organizations. There's nothing on the exam that's antiquated or outdated. You're going to run into these. You'll often see people say, I still have to learn about Lightning. And I tell you, the first week you're working somewhere, somebody's going to walk up into the help desk and say, hey, the charger broke on my phone. Can I get a replacement? Yeah, what phone do you have? Oh, it's an iPhone 8. Oh, well, let me get you your Lightning connector, because you'll need to know about that. This is common. This is not unusual. It's remarkable how often this will occur. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on a plane, looking at what other people are doing on their laptops, and they start up their laptop and it boots up with some old version of an operating system. It's just a normal part of working in today's technology. It's not always about the newest. It's not always about the best. It's not always about what the latest technology was to be released. Sometimes it's about the technology that was released 10 years ago. Whether that's good or bad is a different question that we can argue about, but it's useful to know that the things that you are learning on A+ really are things that will be able to help you throughout your entire career. This is an investment that you are making not only into yourself, but into your family, into your future. These are things that you will be able to use. You'll not be throwing these away. In fact, you'll be building on them to to continue the process. You're going to then learn about everything you want to know about networking. You're then going to learn about security. And that whole time, you'll be moving up into higher level jobs, jobs with more importance, jobs with higher pay, things that will give you more flexibility, things that will give you more options. That's what we hope to provide you, is that link, that first step into the world of IT so that you can then get that job or get that better job. I think that is an investment that anybody can appreciate. And don't listen to the folks that tell you, why are you going through certifications? This is stupid. Computers are going away anyway. I hear that every year. How's that working for us? How's those very, very, very large data centers running, whether AI works or not, whether this becomes a thing or it doesn't? There's still going to be very large data centers. There's going to be a lot of operating systems. There's going to be a lot of hardware. There's going to be a lot of software. There's going to be plenty of cloud. And you are going to be the one to handle every single bit of it. I think that's a good place to finish up today. We've got a lot that we went through in today's study group. But of course, we have another study group this week. This is just our Core 1 study group for A+. If you like this one, you should watch our study group for Core 2. That's going to be on Friday. And if you liked this video, it would be really great if you could give it a thumbs up. That's something that can help us as well, and something that would let other people know this might be something they would want to watch for their A+ studies. Our study group on Friday is for Core 2. I've already written the questions. They're already ready to go. We'd love for you to come back at noon Eastern. If you're ever wondering when the next live event is going to be, I always have them listed in our calendar. You'll find it at professormesser.com/calendar, and you can add that to your calendar, or you can simply see when the schedule is on that one. These schedules will sometimes change, so please check the calendar to know when the next live event is going to be. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We really could not do these live streams without you. We have so much fun doing them. We're so glad that you were able to join us today. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.